Lilian, what's up, brother?
Hello, brother. How are you, Steve?
Let me turn up the volume. Hey,
Yeah,
bro.
I've been trying to set this thing up, but I think I'm okay now.
Yeah? Sound okay?
Yeah, sound okay. Does my sound is okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Damn, bro, you look younger and younger since I saw you last time.
We're yeah, we're in a time and space continuum.
Yeah,
Move
definitely.
forward, move backwards.
What happened since the last time? Make a resume.
Since we met.
Yeah, since we met.
Yeah.
It's been
Well,
almost a year and 6 months, 7 months, something like that.
2017, yeah, October or
No, 2018.
2018 October.
Yeah, September, not October.
September. Wow.
Yeah, time.
Yeah. So, it was a lot of jujitsu training with my son, some traveling still throughout last year, early part of 2020 until about January. And then since then, been home, San Diego. And
I think for you guys, the coronavirus appeared a little bit earlier than for us Europeans.
Yeah, I guess in the news, right? The news creates it. So they start talking about it and then it becomes real. So you guys weren't talking about it yet, but it's a strange situation because
it's changed everything.
Yeah. So no one really, it wasn't contained in the beginning. So it doesn't make sense. Oh, it goes here and now it goes there, but the other places are safe. It's just when they say, okay, quarantine, now everyone's like, okay, the virus. So
this did affect pretty much everyone.
Yeah, in the news, the discussions were in mid to late January in US, and then it wasn't until, I guess, late March, I believe, is when that's when you start to say, okay, it's here and now we quarantine. So it was probably almost 2 months from the time there was first any articles appearing about it.
Yeah.
Until the time there was any action taken. So,
well, it's a lot of discussion about this subject. I've been through a lot of discussion with most of my friends about it. Like, okay, but how does the big boys from stock market knew it and sold pretty much all their shares from Boeing and airlines companies? It's something that it's fishy, but for me, my opinion, we are too small to say anything about it.
Well, here's the thing. Our power is in numbers. Our power is in unification, and that's where the power is overwhelming. And, it's been a tactic that has been used throughout written history, modern history, not even modern history, but through the written history of mankind.
Yeah. From human evolution, it's been.
Well, we can look back. We can look backwards, and that's how we gain clarity. When we are in it, the clarity is very difficult to find because it's processing, and we are animals. So if you were to just change the scenario and you made the dog the dominant, dominion, and we were like the dog, well, the dog would be in the same situation we are in. So like the dog is dependent upon the human, and so the human is dependent upon, and that's really the question, and it's the unseen world. But we're not too small. As an individual working alone, we are small. But when the individuals stand up and connect and unify, now we're overwhelming power.
Well, exactly. But what I believe is that the individual that are having a little bit of conscience to stand up are not as many.
Well, that's part of the illusion, because if you're a guy there in Romania and you're thinking like this and thinking, there's not too many guys like me, there's and I'm a guy in California and I have the same thought, and then there's another person here and here, and before you start talking to people, and then you realize, man, there's people like me everywhere. It's just that there's no login created.
There's no link. There's no link.
And that's all it is once it's organized, then we realize that, you stand up and the whole game is over. So it's really about, this is the opportunity to create an entire new reality.
Yeah.
Because it's about the words. It's about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word is God. And some people just stop and say, oh, I'm not religious. But, the written words and the stories is very powerful. That creates the civilization that we exist in, and when you start going back to the human origins, like where did we come from? Because what we call time, it's a continuum. There's no past, there's no future. We can only reflect on those. Because where there is action, what we can act is in the present. So we have the capacity to act in this moment. We cannot act and change the past, and we cannot actually act in the future other than in our mental processes. So, so when you start stepping away, you realize that it can be described as if it's different realities that are existing simultaneously. Okay, so the past, think about, you're happy, right? You're happy. And some people, they have an easy life, a good life in a sense, and other people, they have a difficult life, right? Like some people have never known hunger. Some people have never known extreme pain. They've had both parents, they got food, all these things. You have other people from the very beginning, they've only known pain. They've only known suffering and struggle, living on the street, wondering where your next meal is going to, never mind, do you have the money to pay for electricity? You don't even have a house, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the two people? They're basically the same, but maybe it's depending on what you believe. Maybe you can say it's karma. If you believe in the cycle where we go and we repeat, maybe you're having a hard time now because you made a lot of mistakes before. So now you have to, I don't try to say I know the answer to all those things, but I just say that we have the power of the consciousness. And if we look back to just the known human history, our ancestors, they came from the trees and forests, and they came from the caves, depending on your ethnicity and where you're from, tribes, right? So because we didn't have fire in the beginning, we discovered the fire. And when we discovered the fire, and when we talk about these things, we can imagine ourselves there, like we went through this, right? Okay, I come from the Caucasian. So my ancestors, they come somewhere, Europe, a mix. But you have others like African, they came from the Nile, right?
Yeah.
But over time, the different tribes, they would come together, they would form bands. So maybe your tribe and my tribe, we get along. We're not at war with each other. So we make a cooperation, and now we move together because there's more power when you have.
It talks about this. I believe you read the human history, right?
Which one? I try to read all of them. Anyone I can get my hands on.
Just a second.
But even all these sacred books, the Bible,
Sapiens.
Yes, of course. Harari, Harari is great. I like his stuff. Also, Homo Deus.
Yeah, Homo Deus also. Homo Deus, I believe that I found myself a little bit more in Homo Deus. I mean, it was a catchier book because it really felt like more actual, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
He's a great researcher, a great historian. He really does. But the idea is like maybe you came from the cave, maybe you came from the forest. We had all these different reflexes. We're animals. We are animals. Okay. We didn't, the British way, the English way, the Roman way, that came much later. Okay. And so if you imagine yourself back then, we find the fire. Now we can keep the beast because we weren't the dominant animal. There were more powerful animals. That's why we had to hang in the trees. And, so when we found the fire, that enabled us the ability to keep the beasts away. Now we have the center of the board. From the fire, you have the ash. Now you have the pencil. And now when we found the paper, because before it was like taking a rock and marking it on the cave wall. And then when we found, the stick and it rains, it's the mud. We draw something in the dirt. Later, we found the pencil, and then we found the paper. So now I can write the word, you see? So when you can write the word, now the word can travel.
Yeah, and the word can travel in time also.
And now we have the iPhone from that, because it's the first technologies, the first technology. We didn't have the cities. We didn't have the kingdoms. These came over time in history. So where we are now it's a new time in history. And so the story has not been written. It's brought us to this point, and there's this uncertainty and unknown and about what's on the other side of it.
It was crazy, your iPhone or whatever phone there is. We have a smartphone. That's the point. And I was sitting today. I was watching a movie. I recommend you, if you like sci-fi movies and with AI and stuff like that. It's called Upgrade.
Upgrade?
Yeah, it's Upgrade. To make the story short, someone it's paralyzed from neck down, and with this upgrade, a chip behind his head, he can move his entire body, but that chip is having a consciousness itself. It's an AI, and he talks with it all the time.
Yeah.
And I was saying, okay, in the same time, my bigger daughter was playing on a phone. She's almost 5. She was playing online with a friend and talking in the same time and seeing looking at each other. And I was like, she's almost 5. At 5 years old, we weren't even not thinking of talking with someone outside of our house. But for me to see them, how much it progressed, how much the technology has progressed, it's like, where are we going to go like this? We are so far away from our beginnings that talk about now. Because if you take one person, even for let's say one generation behind, I don't know for us. I don't know how easy it would be for us to be one generation behind. Put yourself in the position on having to live 100 years ago with all the things that you can do now, like all the
the exponential. It's an exponential growth in information. It's not a linear. So up until 100 years ago, all the way to the previous 100,000 years was not very different. But in the last 100 years, it's so the level of change has been in only the last 2. Really, since World War II is when it's most accelerated, but since really the 1800s. You had the Enlightenment period in the 18th century, and that. So
you were talking about pain and people who lived in a pain-free life, or people who live.
Yes, but when we talk about pain, it's important to me. I'm talking about struggle. I'm
Yeah,
talking about struggle,
it
because
can be
pain
physical or
is necessary. Pain is inevitable in life. There is no life without pain. It's the question is really the struggle,
yeah.
because it's a matter of acceptance. And that's part of it in the process
Now,
is we accept the pain, but we don't have to struggle. The
now
struggle is a
taking
choice.
taking the pain itself for me and all my progress that I've been trying to make and all that, the bottom line has always came to pain.
Yeah.
It's either physical pain or mental pain. Mental pain has been,
Emotional. Yeah.
yeah, emotional pain has been way more difficult than the physical one. Physical, you can beat yourself a lot. I believe that.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
It's physical is the least
I
of it.
believe that physical is the easiest one. You can
Yes.
physical in 2 days you won't feel anything anymore. You
Yeah.
know, but
Exactly.
emotionally, with those thoughts, those unfinished business, you know, like taking an exam, like a kettlebell exam, exactly. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, it's gonna be painful for sure, but if you ain't gonna go through that, you're gonna be emotionally pretty down. So my first question in our first and hopefully not the last podcast is gonna be this: how have you managed pain throughout your life?
I've learned more. I've learned more than what I once knew. And so for me, I realize when you talk about full circle, like you start on a path and then you move away from it and then you come back to it again. So I can use the cliche full circle with martial art and the martial art training, and how I started at a young age in the Chinese martial arts when I was 12 years old. That was my whole life. And I thought I would, that was going to be what I was going to be doing in my profession for the rest of my life. In my late 20s, I realized, no, it wasn't going to be that. And then by my early 30s, I went into fitness. So I moved away from the martial arts completely. And then I came about 2.5 years ago, I came back to the study of the martial arts through the jiu-jitsu, through the
Yeah.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is another thing we have in common. And so from the perspective of a martial artist and in jiu-jitsu, basically you have pressure. And facing the force, how you deal with the pressure, that symbolizes everything about life. It's not about that there's no pressure, because my sensei says sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. This is life. And so when you understand that on a bigger picture, there is no victory without loss, and there is no life without death, and there is no pleasure without pain. So the answer to your question, it has to do with our education. It has to do with our educational framework. How are we processing the world that we interact with? And you talk about movies and these different things. It's at a point where you realize that everything you've been taught, everything you've learned is all an illusion. It's all a lie. In the sense, you can use the word lie, but it's not necessarily intentional, but we can say that it's all an illusion.
Mm.
And whatever parts of it are true is sort of operating independently from the bigger thing, which is an illusion. And, the education that we are raised upon, it's basically a binary system, or what you could call a dualistic system.
Mm.
So, and this is programmed in the earliest days within the household and the family, and it's fast tracked once we enter the school systems, because now we're participating in the state agenda. And so from early childhood, we're basically programmed to fit into the story. And you can play that out in every kind of example, but basically it becomes a competitive model. Like win, lose, right, wrong. And so there comes this focus that to be successful, to be a good citizen, everything like that, you have to win the game. And what is the game and who's playing the game? And so you're participating. We are participating in a game that is actively being played. And so when you step back from that and realize, no, this idea of a duality, it's just an illusion. It's actually a unity, because the life and death are always side by side. It's not like, oh, you're living over here and now you're living. No, they're always side by side at any moment, to where I can have this beautiful life and I can step down, onto the street, and now a car hits me and now I'm gone. So it's life, it's death, just like that. And in jiu-jitsu and martial arts, it's the purity. And that's why I always come back to it. And even with the kettlebell, the whole time I've been a martial artist, but I didn't have a school. I didn't have my sensei. I didn't have my students, my brothers. So I created my own system in teaching the martial art through the kettlebell. But I didn't know that at the time. It wasn't until I came back to the jiu-jitsu, when you look back, I can say, okay, this was, but to have that brotherhood, to have that tribe, however you want to call it, where you're helping each other grow, where I'm giving you pressure and you're dealing and you're giving me pressure and I'm dealing, because pressure makes diamonds. So if you want to talk about pain, talk about pressure, pressure makes diamonds. That pain, the pain is the teacher, and the pain is the opportunity. And, the moment passes. So I'm in pain right now. When it seems like it never passes is when we don't face. When we don't face the force, and then it plays out onto a bigger creative thing, because it's like forces of light, forces of darkness, also within ourselves. People have different names for these things, but we cannot talk about the invisible world with tangible, we put names to describe these unknown. It's like God. Oh, what's God? Well, God is this. I get to touch. How can you take something that is greater than you and put it down to where it fits? You see what I'm saying? So
you could not.
It's good and evil. It's good and evil.
You could not even put it in a name, because it's different for each and every individual.
Yes, exactly.
7 billion. It's like it's one opinion for 7 billion, and it's going to change it for every person. Sometimes,
so it's futility to even try. To even try is, and it nullifies the greatness of it, because it's greater than what we can experience through the 5 senses. And it wasn't that long ago in human history. You had the scientific revolution. 18th century, again, Enlightenment, all these things were going on at the same time, because it was a change in the consciousness of what man could become. And now we're here we are again. It's what we can become. And, but before that, there was a long period of darkness where it's like, if we couldn't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or touch it, it doesn't exist. Right. And now we know that's ridiculous to think in those terms with what we know now. Like, we know there's a whole world that we cannot actually experience through the eyes, or right. But we understand that it's still true. And people call that the spiritual world. Right. So we cannot, in this body is a material, and there's something inside of this body where we're moving around. We are animals. And that's what we have to go back. It's always full circle. We have to go back to our origins and face what and who we really are. So the body is an animal, and then the consciousness is connected to the eternal, and we are becoming God. That's
it was something very, very simple at the end of the movie that I told you. You have to see it. It has a couple of lines that are not for everyone. You have to dig in those lines, And then the end of it, the AI takes control. And I'm a little bit of a spoiler alert now, but it goes very well with what you're saying. So
because it's the same story.
Yeah, it's the same story, but the bottom line is, in the end, the owner, you, is going to receive what he's looking for. So even if the body that you have is going to be lost for you, inside of your mind, you're going to find what you're looking for.
Experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a huge step for every individual. If he
We get to
really
decide.
understands it, yeah, you get to decide. That's a huge thing for every individual, is that you have the possibility, another possibility, the option to decide. It's rather left or right, it's yes or no.
Because that world exists. All of the worlds exist simultaneously, and they exist. And I guess, some use the term parallel, but a person at any moment can do good or can do evil. Any one of us have the capacity at any moment
exactly
to make a decision that does benefit or does harm to ourselves, as well as where we're existing, the community, how big that extends. Someone that has a massive network can impact, someone like the president of the United States can impact billions of people with one decision, where, yourself, maybe in your house, maybe in your gym, there's different degrees, but, then you have people that have no society at all. There's people that are completely alone and don't have any, civilization.
Yeah.
So,
full of tribes.
All of those realities exist between us. We can be completely lonely, and we can also be completely connected. So the fear is really, it's about understanding. There was the saying, I believe it was Churchill, but maybe he wasn't the originator. Maybe he reset someone. These things have been around forever, and different people say it and they get credit, but he said basically there's nothing to fear but fear itself, right? The famous saying, regarding the end of World War II. So, that is a truism, like fear is the fear. So the fear creates its own reality. And pain connects to fear as well, because pain is it's basically not accepting something. And, even like when you were asked about pain, physical, mental, yes, but it's not really both, because the emotional is stored in the body. So we experience it as physical, but that's not necessarily the origin. It's only like if you're a doctor trained in a mechanical way, you're going to look at it mechanically. So the doctor is going to say, oh, this in your shoulder, that's your shoulder. Whereas maybe a different kind of holistic doctor is going to say, actually, it relates somehow to some other organ or some other area of your body where there's an imbalance and the body's compensating. So, but on a bigger scale, even on the emotional level, the ideas and the experiences that we have in life, we process that. So our bodies is a supercomputer that stores information.
Don't you think that pain goes very well hand in hand with passion also? Because every time you stop doing something, it has a strong connection with how passionate you're
yes,
about what you want to achieve.
That's another way to say the same. Yes, because it's emotional. So the emotional, when we talk about passion, we experience it as an emotion, or an emotional reaction. And so the passion is not really the emotion, because we can be passionate in a love passion or in a crime passion too. It's an intense emotional outburst to express some emotion. And, so yes, it does, but it works, in a
both ways,
multidimensional, not in a one way. And the passion that drives us to create something there can be passion that drives us to destroy something. And so really what it means is that you have a emotional bond between your thoughts and your emotions, and then that connects with your actions. And you look at like religious and Jesus, but even before what we have of the Bible, the Essenes, the Essenes who existed at that time, they spoke about this. So like a lot of the sayings in the Bible, if you have, there's the passage that says, talking about faith, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you say unto the mountain, move, and the mountain shall move. So it's to say that even a little mustard seed can move the mountain.
Exactly.
But to the Essenes, that wasn't a cliche, that was a truth. And so we have lost connection. It's when we can unite our thoughts and our emotions and our actions at the same moment, this is when we have the power to manifest. So that gives us the power as God. And, all the other things are distractions when it separates the thought and the feeling and the action, where it's all disconnected. And so we feel confused, and we feel, when we're unified, again, it comes to a unity instead of a duality of like the rain is good, or the sun is good, the rain is bad. That's just a way of thinking, because the sun is good and the rain is good. So in a unity, there is no really evil. There's only love in that, because even the evil you learn to love. The devil, you love the devil. The pressure, you learn to love the pressure and the pain, because the pressure makes diamonds. And when we stop running from that, when we stop turning and we're able to look into that, that's when we have the power over our own story and what we're creating. And it's not a guy like you or a guy like me, like, oh, I'm the only one. It's all of us. And everybody just wants to know that they're not alone. And there's this we have the capacity to create a peaceful revolution instead of another bloody revolution, because we've done that many times.
Yeah.
And every time, but it's like you have to learn the lesson. If you don't learn the lesson, the story repeats. So it's the same idea about compliance and giving our power away to some authority. Well, what is the authority? It's not true authority. It's a less authority, and they only gain authority through our participation and our cooperation. And once we stop to give our authority to the false authority, because I can't speak for others, but for me, there's only one true authority. That is the Almighty. And I don't care what the name, because it's the one. It's one.
You've been through a lot of countries.
Yeah. I've been about 69 or 70. Yeah.
Yeah. You've seen a lot of different beliefs.
Yeah.
What do you believe was the main thing that everyone had in common with different beliefs?
Because we are more similar than different. We are more similar than different, because the truth is we're talking percentages, the great percentages. I'm not talking about the exceptions, but for the most part, if you're born in England, you're a Protestant. If you were born in, Saudi Arabia, you're Muslim. If you're born in, Italy, you're Roman Catholic. If you're born in, maybe in Bosnia, you can be a number of different things. If you're born in, certain parts of Asia, you're going to be a Buddhist. You see what I'm saying? Or if you're born in India, you're a Hindu. So we are born into the culture, first and foremost. And, instead of the Christian looking at the Muslim and the Muslim looking at the Christian and saying, oh, you're different because you believe that and I believe this, or you call it that. In reality, you have to realize that if you were that person, you would have been the Muslim too. If you were born there. And he'd have been you and you'd have been him. And it's just circumstance that you're different. So that's what I notice is we're basically the same everywhere. The difference is just the unimportant things, because it's like we speak different languages, we have different structures, we have different color skin, we have some differences in the food and the local customs, but these are passed over generations, and there were always practical reasons for these things. There were cannibals too, and in fact there still are cannibals. That's not most of us, but there's still cannibals that exist, and there's all these different things. We're hybrids. The modern man, we're all hybrids, because there was the mixing of not just the races, but even the the Neanderthal, so I don't claim that I know all the history. Like we just study what's available, and now we know more because the carbon dating and the discoveries in like paleontology, it's exponential now with the use of AI. And
as you've seen, things change like from generation to generation. They advance in technology, and they change the history as you would look at it 100 years ago. You would look at it in a certain way. Now, knowing more stuff, you look at a total different way.
Yes,
more and more information appears, and I believe that more and more information is going to be available in the future also.
There's multiple histories. There's multiple histories, and that's another thing. Like the history that we've been taught is not our true history. And I like to say that there's the history with the capital H and there's the history with the small h. And what is the history is it's a story, and it's his story. So who is he? He's the one who's telling the story. And so the question is, what's the story for each individual, their own story? And we have to know our own story and know who we really are before we can go forward. But we have not been living to our capacity as a species. We've been living below our capacities. And, it's about looking forward for me. I'm always looking forward. I like to study history, which is, you could say, looking backward, but it's not to stay there. It's to understand where you are now. And so you can gain the clarity to where you're going moving forward. And so it's a great time for humanity right now, because we get to create a nicer story the story that you want.
Exactly.
The world that you want for your kids.
That brings us
to the one you inherited.
Exactly. That brings us to our second question. And that's it. How did you make passion your life?
Well, the passion is like the passion of love, the passion of romance, for sure. I'm a romantic person. You want to have a true love, and you want to, be able to experience that with the person that can teach you about yourself. And it's a part of our nature as an animal. We want to reproduce as well. That we want to, because that's the opportunity that we get to do it again, and we can do it better. That's what the children are. They can be better than us. That's what we want. So family is the foundation of everything. It's the highest. It's the highest part of the code. And then there's other things that are important. Respect is important, and discipline is important, and honor is important. Humility is important. Attitude is important. You have, the martial artists talk about the Budo or the Bushido, or, in our system, we have the 6 blades. It's the same idea. It's the code, the code of the warrior. That's what we are, and so we have to, the passion is actually the fact that I'm alive is amazing, because we are survivors. I'm a survivor. You know what I mean? The opportunity, well, just on a cellular level, it's a miracle that you are able to be in this form, because the great majority cannot ever make that. The great majority doesn't survive the passage. And so we get to survive, and then it's like, waiting around for someone to give us something or show us something, and actually we have everything already. And so that is the passion. Is just, I'm a truth seeker, and I'm a freedom fighter. I'm here because I choose to be. It's not because I have to be, because I know the truth is that, like, again, the first question is pain, and the second question, the pain is always there, because it's like pain experienced in this body. It's a painful existence. Not always, but it's always there and it's never far away. And even when everything is very comfortable, and there were times when we have to change positions. We can be laying with our wife, our child, your baby, perfect day and not a worry in the world. And then there's a moment where you have to put the baby aside and you have to get up and you have to go to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so pain is always there. But for me, the passion is I know what I'm here for and why I'm here. And that keeps me going. It's perseverance. That's the passion. The passion is the perseverance.
Yeah.
You never give up. You don't stop.
And how did you figure out that kettlebell, it's something that is going to be there no matter what you change in your life?
When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And we don't get to choose the form that it appears. We just have to be open to the lesson and the teacher. And so the teacher appeared to me in the form of a kettlebell.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what brought me around the world. That's what gave me the tool to open the door, to connect me to the world, being a simple person without being handed these possibilities. And so that was the tool that facilitated the experience so that I could gain the growth to have the understanding, and then use that in my life and use that to help people, helping myself and helping people.
There was any person that you looked up when you first got into kettlebell?
Well, there's figures. I don't use the word look up because I have a very high standard. There's very, very few people in my life that I will say that I look up to in terms of a model, a role model. I can count those people now on one hand. I don't give that compliment out easily. What I will say is that there are teachers and there are people who have been instrumental in development at a certain stage. But for me, the idea of the game is you have to outgrow your teachers at some point. Exactly. It's not a comparison or a competition. It's to say that I learned what you had to teach, and now I move on and I learn new lessons. You know what I mean? Because most teachers, if really all teachers, they can't teach you everything. They can only teach you what they know. So, if you're talking about the kettlebell and you want to know the story, you have to know the people. And for sure,
I know a little bit. I know you've been in the same entourage with Pavel.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, the kettlebell's been around a couple hundred years, but when you write about the history, you see the modern history of what we now know, and we all know about kettlebell. So Pavel is the godfather of that. He's the guy that was the face and the figure in history that brought that to create the market. Exactly. Okay, and I'm one of the guys that came in as one of his early students. And I absolutely Pavel, but it wasn't from a technical point of view. Because from a technical point of view, when I met Pavel, I basically was already at his level in kettlebell. Yeah. Because he was early in kettlebell and I was early, and I came from martial arts, and he, you know what I mean? So for me, the martial art is the foundation. And I came along when the kettlebell was just brand new. Yeah. So for sure, Pavel is that guy. But if you talk about technique, the best technical teachers are the Russian teachers. The guys like Sergey Rudnev, Denis Vasiliev. Those are guys that are definitely reference points that I've looked at and been, okay, this is the deep understanding. And it's like martial art. It's like there's many senseis, but when you know your lineage and you know where it comes from, when you have the chance to study from a true champion, you learn a lot more. You know what I mean?
Speaking of these figures that you're talking now, I have a question. I'm very online. Like I search when I grab a hold of high quality people. I tend to search their entourage and get to experience a little bit more of what others has to offer also. And for me, it was a big question when I saw David Weck. You know,
Uh-huh.
I was like, where did this guy stayed so long? You know,
Uh-huh. Yeah. He's a unique guy, and he's a very unique person in the, the culture of what we would call the fitness culture. And people
yeah,
say fitness industry. I don't use that term because it's about culture and community. But,
it's
if you're just talking about things related to fitness and sports conditioning, David Weck is a very unique guy as a thought leader and as a innovator. So obviously the inventor of Bosu. David's a guy who he has a
like in
product that is
2000
very
he
famous.
invented the. You
Yeah.
started working with him like in 2000, promoting.
Yes, exactly. So his product is very famous. He's a guy that David Weck, maybe most people aren't going to know him. He's not super famous in that sense.
It's not. He's
But if
not
you
super
if you
famous
say the
online.
Bosu,
Yeah,
yeah, if you say the Bosu, they're like, well, I don't know. But then you show it to them, they know.
everyone knows it. Yeah,
Because it's a half a ball. It's usually blue, but it can be different colors, and there's knockoffs. But the main original brand, it's blue,
yeah.
half a ball. So that's his product. That's everywhere around the world for 20 years now. So I met David in 2000 when he was still making these by hand, cutting Swiss balls in half, duct tape, staple, glue to a wooden platform.
Mm-hmm.
And he was out promoting in the early stages of promoting. He went when he first invented it. His father was helping him. His father is a lifelong consultant in business, so his father really knows about making deals and connections. And so his father got him in the right direction, and he started contacting all the major teams first, because he was living in New York. So it's like the Yankees in baseball, the Devils in hockey. They were Stanley Cup. This is back 2000. They were the champs. You have, the New York Giants football team.
Yeah.
And then you have the New York Knicks basketball team. So those were the first four. Then he goes to the Olympic ski team out in Utah, and like that. So that was the first. Go to the best athletes, the big teams, get them to. They all loved it. They all ordered it. He's still making it by hand. I meet him in 2000 out in California because he comes out. I'm training at this place called Shiley's. At the time, it was a sports development. One of the first early pioneers of functional training, a guy named Dean Brittenham, who he passed away, but he was one of the guy. He was a guy in the 1960s, early 1960s, University of Nebraska track and field coach. And so that's how far we're talking. And he was really probably the first guy. Listen, the OGs that we know about now in fitness, he was way before those guys.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Paul Chek, he was way before Paul Chek.
You were born. So talking about way past.
Yeah. So he had guys, when everyone was trying to lift weights back in the 60s and get big, he was saying, no, be a better athlete. Flexibility, coordination, having athletes juggle. Yes, strength training, but not just being strong in the weight room, being effective on the field. That's what he was about, functional training. And so anyway, I met David. This guy, Dean, Coach Brittenham, had this athletic program. And he was a guy David heard, like, if you want this product to be in front of the best athletes, you bring it to Coach Brittenham. If he likes it, that's good. And Brittenham always had people sending him stuff. NASA would send him exercise equipment to test, stuff like that. So that's where we met. And then right away connected, I did all this stuff. And, again, I had, I had almost 20 years of martial art training by that point when we met. And, so good body awareness and coordination and physical development. And we connected. He asked me to start working with him to promote the Bosu. We were going around the country to all the different trade shows, the Idea World, the URSA, club industry, all these, ECA, a bunch of different, in America, we have these big fitness expos. They have it in Europe, like Europe FIBO is the real big one.
I saw.
All these types of trade shows and, promoting, hey, try the Bosa. No one knew what it was. And it was like, oh, yeah, people would be like, oh, yeah, that's like half a ball. I stand on the ball. At first they were like, oh, didn't realize what you could do with it. So I was working for a couple of years real heavily with that, promoting, training balance. And then just, kettlebells just came on shortly after that. First kettlebell, like I saw in 2001. So by 2004, I was teaching kettlebell workshops around the US. 2005, by 2007, I started doing that around the world. And now 2020, I've been, more than 60 countries and teaching kettlebells.
Yeah, kettlebells.
So yeah, David Beck has definitely been an influential figure, not related to kettlebells. And actually, I told David, back then, training out in the park with kettlebells back in like 2001, 2002, saying, man, this thing's going to be big. It's going to be, everyone's going to be using this. He's like, nah, I don't see it. And he's an inventor. And he's an inventor. And so he was wrong about that. We have funny stories about that. But, kettlebells is it. So I've always been an early adapter. I'm not an inventor like David is, but I'm a guy that I've seen things and be like, yeah, this right here, this is good. And this is going to take off and this is going to be big. Because I just have an eye for that with the physical, and so definitely I was early adapter with the Bosu early before it became a program, and also with the kettlebell when Pavel was like just starting on the scene. And
Pavel and his show was kind of hilarious because
it's funny. It's marketing.
Kind of guy to watch a show of his on YouTube, like it was like you are looking at the starting of a German porn, exactly like this. You are like, okay, when is gonna start?
The music is yeah. Yeah. It was
what the fuck
pretty racy, I guess.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And
it is. But he was an interesting character. At that time he came on and people were like, what do you think?
It was very straightforward and was like, very,
and you're in Eastern Europe, but you can imagine, 20 years ago in US, in America, in California at that, like it's a different scene, and because before kettlebell, he was doing like the relax and to stretch. It was like the splits. He had a book and DVD on the splits and, stuff like that. And before that, he was kind of unknown. So he went from an unknown trainer, just like everyone trying to fight. He was actually selling, I think, hot dogs out of a kiosk in St. Paul, Minnesota, so that was his start, I think, in US. And then, fitness stuff. He had a background in dance. I believe his mother was like a prima ballerina or something, a high level.
Now I understand the posture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was his flexibility was his main thing. And then the kettlebell came, a year or two after that. He didn't have kettlebells at first or anything like that. So he made a connection with John Duquesne of Dragon Door. And John is a big expert marketing. At that time it was the early kind of internet, what was called guerrilla marketing. And I don't really follow marketing, so maybe guerrilla marketing is still around, but it's not as in vogue. At that time, like early 2000s, it was guerrilla marketing with the internet online. Mm-hmm. And so it was very untraditional because like with a kettlebell back then, it's not like, usually if you're going to buy something for sports, you think go to the sporting goods store. Like you need a basketball, you need a soccer ball, you need, whatever, maybe some weights. You go to the sporting goods store, whatever the big brands, and you buy it. It wasn't like that with kettlebell. You ordered it on the internet. And most people, like I wasn't even on the internet really. I was just first getting the first computer in my house, a Mac or whatever those Macs were, iMac, I think. Yeah, and and then it was like, then so the first customers of kettlebell were computer people that could find like search engines that knew how to use it. And like, you're sitting at work, you're a computer guy, knows fitness and whatever. I don't know what they would do it at home, home workout, then these guys were the first ones to see this. So then you would order the kettlebell through a mail order catalog. I was getting the Dragon Door catalog in the mail every 4 months. And that's when I saw Pavel, like reading through this catalog, so it was totally different. Kettlebells weren't famous, and so I got to be a guy who was really the main guy that saw that and started bringing it all around the world to all these different countries. I wasn't the first, but I was the first to bring it all around to a lot of places where it's like, oh, the first kettlebell workshop ever. Most of the time it was me doing that. And then, there's other guys that have done it as well, but I saw the opportunity for that, really. In 2005, I made the Encyclopedia of Kettlebell Lifting DVD, and that's what kind of got me connected to the international community, because the producer of that, Shihan, he was a guy that was quite internet savvy as well, because he had some internet businesses.
Yeah.
So, the producer there, Paul Veely is his name. He was putting like clips from the video we did together on YouTube. And I didn't even have a YouTube account back then. I was like, so people were seeing my stuff on YouTube. And then from there, once I set up my own, website and stuff, I would get emails saying, hey, I love your stuff. I'm here in this country.
You set up your own things, like your channel, your YouTube channel, your link or what?
Later, yeah, like years later. But like in the beginning days, I set up my first website in 2004. So at that time, starting in 2003 is when I started working with Pavel and connected with Pavel. And I was, one of the instructors. It was myself and a handful of guys, Steve Maxwell.
Yeah,
he's well known in the fitness, Mike Mahler, Brett Jones is the only guy that's actually still connected with Pavel's organization all these years later. But he was one of the early, senior instructors. It was myself, these other guys, Nate Morrison, couple other guys, Rob Lawrence, so there was like group of like six or seven of us that was like helping Pavel teach the RKC courses at that time.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of got onto, and I was seeing what Pavel was doing. He was like, oh, you should make a DVD, with combining your Kung Fu with kettlebell. So I did. I created Full Contact Kettlebell in 2004. And I just, I didn't know what I was doing on the tech side, but I saw what a couple other guys were doing. So it's like I did that, set up a website.
I saw someone else also. Do you know Jitsu, kettlebell Jitsu or something like
Kettle Jitsu? Yeah, Kettle Jitsu. That's Joey Alvarado. He came on, a few years later. And he's a great guy, and he was a smart guy that saw, with the jiu-jitsu background, and saw that and like made his brand with the combining elements, and very smart. He kind of did his own thing, which is good, but for sure. And Joey has referred to me many times, because like I was a guy where when he didn't know about kettlebells, he was seeing my videos, like learning off of my videos. So there's been now I'm not. Again, I don't take credit for anybody. That's just the truth of the history of it. But, now there's a lot of different things. But back then, nobody even knew about kettlebells. And then it was like Pavel was the first guy.
Mm-hmm.
The only people that knew about kettlebells back in 2001 would have been some old army guys in Russia or, Soviet Union or ex-Soviet Union.
They weren't even around. Most of them,
right.
They were like triangular.
Yep, more angular, and depends on the area. Like Ukraine be a little different, or depends on the factory. There was no standardized, and there was the kettlebell sport, which was standardized, but kettlebell sport was like just a national sport. Nobody outside of that region really knew about it, So it was not until Pavel where it came in America, and it became a market in America. And so I was in on the early when that happened. And then from there, I saw the opportunity to bring it around the world, and then now fast forward 20 years, it's wide open. Anybody can do whatever they want to do with kettlebell.
Now it's implemented pretty much anywhere.
Yes, exactly. But even still, the technical standard, if you look at all the kettlebell around the world, just judging by like YouTube, the technique is still very bad with most users. There's some great ones and there's a lot of bad ones.
Exactly after we had the course, I saw about two more courses around here, but the difference was huge. First of all, the rate of people who passed the test were about like 90. The test itself didn't look anything close to your test. And third thing that really it kills me sort of, like, because nowadays everyone can teach online, or everyone can teach online.
Yes.
It's easy to grab a camera and just do some exercise, name them, and suddenly you're a trainer.
Right.
It's very easy. But what I fear the most for these kind of trainers overnight is as well you said, like this, from the first day of course, you've kind of predicted who is going to take the course and who is not going to take the course. This is something that I appreciate very much, because for me, if it's easy, then it's not worthy, But a lot of people in our society nowadays are more focused in having something to show off rather than knowing that something.
Yeah, that's true. And it's not confined to just fitness, but there's a standard of quality issue. It's a personal thing. It's a personal standard, I believe, because there is a lot of corruption, and that's what you're talking about with if you take something that by itself is good and pure, and you focus it to where now the importance becomes about profiting from it in a money way. Like, how can I do business with this thing? If that becomes the guiding principle, now it's already been corrupted, because you're doing the thing for something else instead of for what it's for. And, that's a problem with society, because we see that across different countries, different, standards, but you see it in America, it's in every business. But the food industry becomes corrupted. The medical industry becomes corrupted. Things that by themselves in nature are good and necessary, now you can't even trust it because it's been corrupted. And it's the same thing with the kettlebell. It's like, it's a service. So the first thing is to learn how to use it, and you get the benefits for yourself. Like, oh, I love the kettlebell because it did this for me, it does that for me, and I still use it because it makes me feel great, and I can be strong, and and I'm not getting hurt, and I feel good, and my posture, right? All the personal reasons that someone has, or and I lost a bunch of weight, and this helps me keep lean. So that's the first thing. You use it, you love it because it works and it's good for you. Then second step, man, I want to share this with the world. Okay, but you put in your 10,000 reps.
Yeah. That's the point.
You share it with the world, you're sharing something that has some experience behind it, something that, skin in the game. It's not like, oh, this kettlebell thing's taken off, I'm a businessman, or I'm trying to make money here. There's nothing wrong with trying to make money. That's natural. We do that to live. But it's like, if you're looking at it and you're not in it, and you're out and you're saying, how can I take it and make money now? But you don't have you have to go through it first. And that's where it falls short. So you have fitness people that are like, oh, kettlebells are hot, so I use my brand and I need to make a kettlebell program because people are looking for kettlebell. Because in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So if you know nothing and they know nothing and you know just a little tiny bit more, they think you know everything.
Exactly.
Because they know nothing. And then it's not till later they find out that, oh, wait, he didn't really know anything. But that's okay. Sometimes in history, people are instruments of change. And maybe they themselves are not there's people that are famous for stuff and they didn't actually do the work. But they're famous because they were associated with it in some way. That's just,
Exactly what you're saying now. I'm going to make a pause and jump a little bit on another end that for sure you have some knowledge about it. First time when I heard about, when I saw the Wim Hof method,
yeah,
it was, I had no clue about Wim Hof, who is it or something. But because if you have more knowledge about internet and being more how should I say, you make yourself more visible online, you're going to be on top of the one that actually created the thing,
Yep.
And this way it's very bad, I could say, for those who create stuff like you said about David. He was not that known, and in my opinion, he is still not that known.
That's right.
Like, and you also, it's. I know you now, and some of my friends know you from me, But the publicity that you guys deserve, way less than you actually.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't really worry about that. I agree with you, but I think, things work out over time and there's different motivations in life. It's like for sure, from a marketing point of view, I know that I have left a lot of money on the table, as the saying goes. Like there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of, and if I had gone in a different direction, for sure, because my resume is extremely developed. You know what I mean? I have a very strong resume to where there are people with much less of a resume that maybe on the search engines, you're going to see them before you see me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You don't know anybody. You're just looking because of, good positioning. But that's part of life too. The thing is I feel really good about the work that I do. And I believe that if it's my destiny to be more famous, if it's my destiny for more people to know me, maybe one day now it's like everybody knows, okay, if that's my destiny, I accept it, but I don't need it. And I don't actually care about that because I just care about doing good work and helping people.
But don't you think that standing on a evolution scale and technological scale, you kind of have the possibility of actually helping out your destiny a little bit,
Absolutely. And what I've come to realize is we all have different skill sets. I'm not a tech guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to become a tech guy. It's not my interest, but I want to be able to utilize the tech. So what I think is the best way is through alliances. Now, again, a few years ago, this wasn't true. Now I have a lot more connection to people that are like big players in the tech world. Like, for example, a friend of mine is Vishen Lakiani. He has a company called Mind Valley.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Mind Valley, you see that, they have a very big presence on the internet. Like Mind Valley is the world's largest what's called personal growth personal growth industry is how it's referred.
Yeah.
You know, so 20 years ago, maybe it was Tony Robbins, you know, Anthony Robbins, but Mind Valley is the biggest now in terms of like, you know, so that's an example of a company that they do massive stuff with the technology leverage platform. And I think that's amazing. But for me, I would rather plug into that with what they're doing than create and go in that direction with my company, because that's not my interest. And I'm a guy that I have to be interested in what I'm working on.
Yeah, but the goal,
I'm not interested, I don't want to do it.
The main purpose is the same. You're trying to...
I just like to teach.
Yeah, you're trying to teach more people.
Yep, I just like to teach. And if it's one person or it's 10,000 people, you know, I like it.
Yeah.
Either one. I can do both. You know what I mean? But actually, like now, I'm doing even more in the last few weeks because of just how the reality has changed. And now it's like people are reaching out saying, hey, will you do it online? Before, I never wanted to do it online.
Yeah.
You know, people ask me over the years, I never created like an online certification because I prefer the hands-on, you know, but now it's like you have to work within the realities.
I wanted to ask you also about the online thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about level 2 online, if it's going to be available.
Yeah, absolutely. All of it now.
Like it can be on Zoom or whatever.
That's how I'm doing it now. Yeah.
Nowadays,
I just started last week doing it in this format, and it's working really well. You know, so the thing is there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know when things are going to open up. It's all just rumors.
I'm pretty
but
sure.
In terms of international travel, it's not going to be weeks. It's not going to be months. It may be a couple of years. We don't really know. So it's like you can't. My business before this was based on events mostly. You can't make events if there's, you know what I mean? And it's not just me. It's not just you. It's all of us. Even the sporting clubs that have, you know, $1 billion owners or billionaires, even they can't plan events. So it's like the new reality. So now, okay, online training is the reality. We have to do it. And we make it the best that it can be. And it's good.
I believe it's very good that we're living in an era where we actually can go around the problem.
Yep.
It's physical, but we have to adapt. And after all, that's what challenges are all about.
Yes.
You have to.
It's becoming. We're becoming. Yeah. It's not a being, because being is like it stays. It becomes. We're evolving. Yeah. You know, and throughout history, the strong survive. That's
exactly.
You know, so same with this.
And here comes we are getting back to the pain, physical or mentally, you know, emotional.
Yeah. And discomfort, you know, how we deal with the pressure.
Because for me also was like we were a very compact group. We still are a very compact group of like at least 25 people. And for me, that's huge to try to keep them together, even if we are separated, you know. And it was such a hit that imagine there was no week in the past 5 months. There were no week without going to the mountains and training. There was no week without seeing ourselves 6 times a week. Like every morning we were going training. We were seeing at the gym also at second training and all that, and having such a huge shift in habit, you know. It's more of a mental thing rather than physical, because physical you can do something about it, but having to do it by yourself, you know. And even if you talk, okay, I talk to you now, I get my motivation and all that, but when I start training, basically I'm start training. And this is a very big drawback, and I've seen that online lately, that a very big drawback for people is that they don't have that special place to go anymore. Like they can't go to gym anymore. They can't go outside and meet people.
The social component.
Exactly, the social component. It's a big helping pole for a lot of people, you know. And this is
That's the
where
greatest test right now
yeah,
for
this is
humanity.
where
Because
the strongest will survive. Like, but this is it's not a like straightforward survival thing, but it's more like how much you're gonna lose from your fitness. And I'm talking athletes also. How much I'm gonna adapt and keep my fitness till things are gonna get back.
yeah, I mean, in kettlebell, you don't really have to lose too much, but in like jujitsu, you lose a
Oh,
lot because you
God.
cannot train jujitsu by yourself. You can train elements, but you have to spar. You have to, and so kettlebell is one of the beautiful sports for the individual
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it doesn't matter the location. If you have a few kettlebells, you can still stay with your sport.
Yeah, I have my babies right there. Part of
Yeah,
my babies.
yeah.
I
So
have two of them in my car. I can go at the gym also if I want, but I saw that if I have free free weight, free kettlebells, it's enough for me to
yes,
cover pretty much all my needs. You know,
for sure. I
for
feel the same.
for heavier exercises or not. But if I want even heavier, I've experienced that I can grab two of them in one hand.
That's
If,
right.
if I want heavier stuff. But yeah, jiu-jitsu has been suffering a lot.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide thing. I've been lucky enough to be friends with my teacher.
Yeah. So
And
you get to,
we kind of got around the problem a little bit, and
yeah.
I think we've kind of now the past week we haven't trained, but in the previous week we trained like more than we were training at the gym. It was like okay, free time.
Yeah. Yeah. We
you
make the
know,
best. That's
yeah,
great.
but it's getting to a point where it's starting to you start to feel it, you start to miss it.
You do.
You
You do.
don't have the pressure anymore, and
That's right.
and
That's,
being
yeah.
especially us, because you as me, we come back from a fighting background, a martial arts background, and
Yeah. We need to have
we
the
like the pressure. We need the pressure.
yeah, to motivate you
Yeah,
to,
for me, kettlebell ain't enough. I mean, I love it. I wake up with it, and I it's part of my routines and stuff like that. But it's
yep.
not the pressure that releases.
No, there's nothing else like the martial art in that, in the pressure. And from a sport position, I think really the grappling more because the striking a lot of pressure as well, but the grappling, you can go harder for longer without serious injury.
Yeah, it's, it's
So
it's like this. If you get knocked out, if you like in kickboxing, if you get knocked out at sparring, you ain't gonna get back up and work
right, right,
100% again.
yeah, you don't
Not
get a
like
lot of reps in.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You don't get a lot of reps in. So it's gonna be strange to see how this goes with
Yeah, and I think the important thing is we have to still take the opportunity to progress in whatever ways, different ways. We may not be able to progress in some areas, but we can progress in some other area. And it's not for me to say what I know for myself, but it can be reading, it can be studying, it can be writing, it can be exercise, it can be, meditation. There's things we can do at home, things we can do with the family, spending time, everyone has a different situation, but the mentality and how we approach it is really the priority, because if a person allows oneself to get into the thought process of, oh man, I'm stuck at home and this is horrible, and
No,
I'm worried about this, that's a negative cycle.
you're gonna get into the snowball effect.
Momentum.
Once you get it started, it's gonna roll down the hill without
right. So do that in a way that's going to benefit, not in a way that's going to. We need to be better off when we get allowed out of our house again, not worse off.
Exactly.
And we get to decide through the thoughts of habit, and everyone, we have a chance to evaluate, everything in values and society, what we want to bring into that. We make the world a better place in that way.
I wanted to ask you something else that. Another thing, that I know about you, you've got from omnivore to vegan, right?
Yeah,
full
5
vegan,
years ago.
raw vegan, because nowadays there are so many.
No, I don't. I'm not raw vegan myself. I have a few meals every once in a while, but no, that's not my criteria. I just don't eat animal, so I don't eat the animal products or foods.
And it's something I always, as I told you, once I see someone a quality person, I tend to look at their friends and their people close to them, and Pavel and you guys have the same thing in common, like kettlebell, okay? And Pavel is a very straightforward guide when it comes to meat. Don't eat chicken. It's the weakest animal. It's the weakest bird. So he goes a lot on the steaks and stuff like that. Did you take this decision to move toward vegan for health issues, or you took it as a result of your experience and what you've learned and your personal decision?
Yeah, it was about life experience, and it was about, when people talk about, they use the term ethical and ethical vegan as the motivation. And of course we talk about ethics. There's personal ethics, there's professional ethics. So for me, yes, it's ethical consideration. And then subsequently to that, now, okay, my body's changing because I'm eating differently. It took some time, but I had to find the balance. I had to find a way that, okay, I'm existing as vegan now, so I have to be able to do it in a way that I'm healthy and I can perform. And so I learned to be more knowledgeable about the nutrition and how to find different foods. And, for me, ultimately, it's based on how I feel. So I feel good. And so, I can always do better. I can always, make even better choices and put more time into the food preparation process and select. But overall, I almost always feel good. I very rarely don't feel good. So, for me, it's not difficult at all. And my relationship with food changed a lot, 5 years ago.
Where did you take your Bs?
B vitamins?
Yeah.
I supplement the B vitamin.
So you supplement,
especially B12. Yeah. And the body can store, excess of B. So I don't have to take it with every meal. But yeah, that's important for vegans. Certainly, that's the most important. There's other things as well, but that's the most important. Is a
lot of vegans that I know, or they experienced this kind of diet, is that a lot of them are doing it wrong. And once you're doing it wrong, you're gonna put a stamp on it, like it's not good.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are doing many things wrong. Also, a lot of people are also wrong about how they're eating meat if you're going to eat meat, because there's a better and a worse way to do that as well. But yeah, I mean, for sure, the common association with the vegan, it doesn't normally resonate a message of health, vitality, and strength. It normally resonates an image of kind of weak and kind of flaky. I don't know. I think it's, you know, it's only in the last couple of years really that even veganism has been a topic that's made its way into the mainstream conversation. You know, prior to, you know, a decade ago, if you heard veganism or vegetarianism, it's associated with like hippies, you know, so whatever the images of that, you know, rebel outside of society, you know, hippies, smoking a lot of pot, you know, a lot of different things like that, right? So it wasn't really associated to mainstream until you started seeing, for good or bad, celebrity culture. So when you see celebrities talk about it, then the regular person starts paying
Yeah,
attention.
yeah.
You know, so when we had, you know, in the last decade, you start having more and more prominent celebrities, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe I'm going to try it too, because this hero idol that I love their movies or whatever does it, or love their music, you know. So I don't know if that good or bad, but that's the reality of our culture. It's not just on that, it's on a lot of things. You know, when the celebrities talk about it, we pay attention. So Me Too, right? That was another example.
Yeah.
Famous person talks about it, now it becomes a discussion point where it's been going on the whole time and nobody really paid attention to it if it didn't affect them directly.
Yeah, but
So
I think it's better for every individual to stick to what it works for him.
yes, and you know, to test
Yeah.
and you know, the thing I say is I don't really get into conversations about what someone should or shouldn't do. I share my story, my
Hmm.
experience. I know what works for me, but at the same time, I acknowledge that I'm not the same person I used to be, and I'm not going to be the same person, you know, at some point in the future. You know, in 20 years from now, I'm going to look back and see that I made changes. So I can't really predict that right now. I can look back and see that, okay, there was a time when I was eating a certain way.
Yeah.
Now I eat a different way because I have different understanding, different knowledge, different experience, different feelings, you know, and I know the good that comes out of it because I live it, you know. So it's not based on what other people think or even what I read. It's based only on my own experience with it. And you know, if someone wants to analyze it, there's a lot of things we can look at as to why. For sure, we can predict that more and more people will become vegan,
Mhm.
either by choice or by necessity. You know, if you want to look at it from an environmental point of view, there's things you can look at there. If you want to look at it from a health point of view, there's things you can look at there. If you want to look at it from a performance point of view, there's things you can look at. And if you want to look at it from an emotional point of view, for me, it's the emotional. That
Yeah.
was what directed the decision. It's the relationship with the animals
Did
and the
the
connection there.
did the performance suffered for you?
Only initially in the first year, up to a year, it did, but that's because it was a drastic change. And so my
Yeah.
body, I went from, you know, it's like going from eating meat and eggs and stuff all the time to never eating it. And, you know, so the main factor for me was because of my lifestyle, and now of course not, but at that time still I was traveling a lot. We're talking
Yeah.
5 years ago when I
Yeah.
became vegan. I was still traveling very oftenly internationally. And at that time was really just when the China market was opening up to me. So I was going to China more often than anywhere else,
Hmm.
like multiple times per year, 4, 5, 6 times a year sometimes. And you know, in certain cities, I wasn't finding food that I could eat
Yeah.
because there's certain cities where it's not modern, you know, where they're eating there's no dishes without animal in it. You know, like if you go to like Szechuan province, for example, you know, hot pot, that's where the hot pot comes from, the famous hot pot, the Szechuan, spicy, you know, so you go there, it's like there's no food if you're not going to eat meat, you know? So, you know, so it's like, oh, I can eat rice and I can eat vegetables and that's it. Nothing else. You know what I'm saying? So, and then,
that's
so that was initially the issue was I was like not eating very much because my principle was so strong that I was going hungry because I was unwilling, you know, and so I lost a lot of weight at first. Whereas previously, you know, and for sure compared to now, I was a lot bigger if you see videos from me 10 years ago. But that's not what it's about, because in terms of performance, no, my performance is still at a high level. And the only thing that went down would be my max. But honestly, I don't train max and my body weight is lighter and I'm 50 years old. So I'm not going in that direction. My interest is in mobility and being strong in jiu-jitsu.
So
So
any plans
that's
for
all I care about is my jiu-jitsu technique, is that I have the strength to be able to be as effective as I can be in jiu-jitsu. And, you know, and so if it's about skill, it's about technique. The strength supports that. The strength is not, if your technique is based on strength, then that's your technique. And then when you're no longer at full strength, your skill diminishes. You know, so like Arnold Schwarzenegger is not Arnold Schwarzenegger that he once was, right? He'll never be that because it's based on a physical. But, you know, and if you're talking about competitive sports, yes, there is a peak. But, you know, in terms of martial art, it's a lifestyle. So actually you keep getting better as you get older because you become more skillful. And what you know, maybe you can't jump as high, maybe you can't lift as heavy, but you're more intelligent, you're more patient, you're more disciplined, and you have more practice. So
maybe you don't
understand leverage.
Maybe you don't need, even have to jump or need to jump anymore.
Exactly. You evolve your technique around the realities of the physical. So, you know, I can still do everything that I could do before, but, you know, I don't have the same body weight and I don't train with the heavy weights as much. You know, now I like to train with moderate and more repetition and more movement.
I was getting close to that question also because I'm a huge fan of body weight training. Like, I believe that you can't, or you can. In matter of fact, you can, because a lot of people are doing it. But if you can't control your body and do things with your body, you know, so being able to train with your body, you know, it's something very helpful for going to the next level. Like for me, kettlebell, when we moved to kettlebell, it was like okay, this is something, because I've experienced bodybuilding also prior starting with the body movement and all that, and I observed that first of all I didn't like the rigid body that I was transforming myself. I was like very rigid. I had like 87 kilos, like 10 kilos more than now, and the body weight exercises. So do you believe that body weight exercises can be as efficient or closely remote to training with different mechanisms, like how do you call accessories, you know?
Yes. So, you know, the term you used was efficient. And certainly we have to look at what the end goal, where weights gives you the edge is in the intensity factor. So you're not going to be able to generally get the same intensity with body weight than weights for most people in most areas of the body. There are exceptions. Certainly gymnastic rings in terms of upper body development is plenty sufficient. For the most part, so there are things, for the lower body intensity, no, because, you can do the one leg squat to make it a body weight squat more intense. You can do like a shrimp squat to make a one leg squat more intense. There's things you can do to make it more challenging. You can do, the jumping pistol to make it more intense. So there's always ways that you can increase the intensity of body weight. Yes. But you use the word efficiency. So efficiency is how can I accomplish the task the most directly with the minimal amount of effort or the minimum amount of time or without wasted effort. And so there does come a point where when you've mastered body weight, if you're going to continue to increase it, you either have to increase reps or you have to increase ways to make it more difficult. And then you're going to reach a peak where now you can't make it more difficult anymore and you can't do more reps. So at that point, now adding an additional weight is how you can progress. So I don't say that, no, because if you take a body weight athlete that's the highest level, he's not going to have as much lower body development as someone who is training with weights. That's the main area. Upper body, I would say yes. For almost everything, you can develop upper body as efficiently or even more. But again, if we're talking about the masses of people, yes, for the masses of people, body weight is sufficient. Because if you're talking about skill and day-to-day effectiveness in your life, then control of the body, like you said, the body is the vehicle. So we have everything else comes out of that. And the more skillful you are with controlling your body, the better you're going to be at all the other things. So even if you're holding a weight, you're also going to be better at lifting the weight because you can use your body. So we never can separate the body. But I won't say that body weight is all things to all people for all goals.
Yeah, it depends on the goal.
You need weights.
Yeah.
And before we had, kettlebells or barbells or dumbbells, people were lifting rocks or lifting heavy sticks or lifting bags to get stronger. So it's always been a part of, the human development is resistance training beyond just the body weight. But in the modern times, people move so far away from the body weight. And now more of us are interested to go back to the body weight. So I would say that the body weight is the foundation, and you have to consider the age, because in a perfect world, in the society that we want, we begin our physical education in childhood. And in the world that we have today, for many people, they don't even do any physical training until they're maybe in their, could be 20s, could be 30s, could be 40s, could be 50s. So they don't have that foundation of youth to where, so if I have a child and I'm training them, we're doing just body weight first for a period of time until you have mastery over your body. Now if you're 35 years old, it might be easier for you to learn certain things with a kettlebell than using body weight, because you might be so uncoordinated or have such a weak connection to the body that you can't even perform the body weight. And we see that a lot when we're, as coaches, when we're working with adults, it's like things that would be fundamental, like a push-up or a squat, can be extremely difficult, where maybe they can't do one body weight squat, but you put them in a goblet squat with a dumbbell or a kettlebell and they can do one. So in that, but you do the same thing for like a 5-year-old, it's going to be totally different in how they respond. So there's never one thing that's the right for every person, but there's some general principles. And I would say, as a general, no matter who you are, you gotta get to the point where you're moving your body. And I would say mobility more so than calisthenic. Calisthenic is like, you want intensity, you want to get stronger. Okay. But the mobility is just, you want to be pain free. and be able to exist without stiffness.
Yeah, no stiffness. No
Yeah.
stiffness. Yeah.
So mobility is for everybody. Everybody has to move. Everybody moves and everybody breathes. So breathing is the number one foundation and movement is the number two foundation.
Well,
And then all the other stuff is added.
breathing, it's literally a technique. Because if you don't have breathing, especially in kettlebell, if you don't have breathing spot on, you're going to lose it.
It's the main emphasis of kettlebell as well as everything else, running, you name it. So, and I say breathing is the foundation because everybody breathes. It doesn't matter your level, LeBron James, the highest level of athlete, or the, grandmother in her last breath. No matter anyone in between, we all have to breathe all the time. And, there's nothing else that everybody does. You can say, oh, everybody walks, but not everybody even can walk. Some people are in wheelchairs, right?
Oh,
so that's the one universal factor is the breathing, and it is technique, just like your movement is technique. Like there's qualities of how well we breathe, and yes, there's an autonomic in which we do without thinking, but when we add the conscious to it, now we start harnessing the power of it. And that's, you mentioned Wim Hof. That's where the teaching of Wim Hof, he really goes deep into that area, is the power of the mind and using the breath with the mind to gain control of your mental, your mental components, and being able to influence your physical health through that, through a conscious directive.
So what I'm getting from you now is that basically throughout your life you became more on the mental part, and I believe that you meditate also.
Yes.
And the connection through meditation, breathing, and physical exercises made you whole.
Yes. Well, I'm becoming whole. We all are becoming whole, which is to be everything that we desire and to be everything that we are intended to be. And it can take a lifetime, and so it's a process. I would say I'm whole, yes, but I also know that I'm still working on things. I still know that I'm still growing into another version that's even more than this right now, and so, but it is in the martial arts, the term, the mind, body, and spirit, it's an integration of the Trinity, and yes, so everything moves in the direction of the mental, because I realize that everything is mind, because I realized in the process that, again, I'm 50 years old, and that doesn't mean that when we're 50, we know everything, but we know more than we did when we were 40.
You feel the bit more gaps. You filled with information.
We do, because we have to adapt.
Exactly. As I remember you telling me, courses are not for beginners. Courses are for people to fill their gaps. I go to a certain course. I already know about that, and I fill the gaps that I need to fill in order to get me to another level. And
yes, because if you're studying martial arts, your first fight is not going to be the UFC championship.
Exactly.
Your first fight is going to be someone going kind of easy and letting you move, and and maybe your goal is to be the champion athlete, and that's where you're going, right? So why shouldn't it be like that in everything else too? And people, they want to come in on the top floor. You got to get in the elevator on the bottom, on the ground floor, and work your way up, right? So yeah, it's like that, and and that's the beauty of failure, is because it's in the losses and the pain. That's when we learn.
And I believe at the top of the pyramid, you don't even care anymore about the top. It's about all the all
Because
the
I want to be with people. I want to be
yeah,
with the
yeah.
people that
You get to the point where you actually just uh,
you want to
experience.
help.
Yeah, yeah,
You just want to help. And that's, and I said before, like, I'm a freedom fighter. I'm, here because I want to be, not because I have to. Because the thing about the physical is the body gets old, all of us. The body can get sick, it can get injured, it can get disease, it can break, and it will die.
exactly.
That's it always will die. So your whole reality can't just be upon the physical, because if your whole reality is about the physical, you get to a point where you've reached the peak and you will never grow beyond that. You only can go down. It's like the athlete, Michael Jordan, the best ever, and he couldn't keep playing because his best was no longer what his best was. So it's a downward. Arnold, so your icons of the physical, it represents, but even those icons, they don't exist like that forever.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
at
They
some point,
change.
you have to realize there's more to you than the physical. Even if your whole life is based upon being an athlete or kettlebell or whatever, or physical, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but it means you have to evolve. And you have to realize that before you did the rep, to get to be the champion, you did the 20,000 reps. But before you did the reps, you had to make a decision to do it. So it started in the mind. It was an idea before it was a physical thing.
Exactly.
And when we understand that, we realize that the discipline of the mind is the greater discipline, because we can train our bodies, and it requires the mind to be involved. When you train effectively, it's because your mind is coordinated with the body. They're doing the same dance. They're not in opposite against. It's not like the body saying, oh, I want to be over here laying down in bed. And the mind's like, oh, you're working hard, right? You have to make an agreement where the mind says it's time to work and the body says, let's work. So it's all with that. And, the thought leaders and the captains of industry, or however you want to call it, they're not the physical ones. They're the ones that have, Jeffrey Bezos it doesn't mean nothing if he can do it 5 reps, or, if he does training, it's just so that he can be more effective at thinking.
I'm gonna get back one line to what you are saying about body and mind. What's your state on overtraining? Do you believe in such thing as overtraining?
Well, the concept exists, but it's just a way of saying it's what it is under recovery.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's also saying there's no such thing as overtraining. There's only under recovery. So the real question is, yes, does it exist? Yes, you can be overtrained. How? Because you are under recovered. So it can happen, but it's about homeostasis. It's about balance. It's about having a cooperation where there's balance between work and rest, and so it's different criteria for the competitive athlete than there is for the family person who's just training for some other purpose, not for victory in sport. Because victory in sport, the victory is the purpose of your existence. And so you're willing to sacrifice everything else for that. You're willing to sacrifice health, well-being, and so your body takes on more than what the healthy body would take on, because it's not the healthy. It's not balanced. It's out of balance to be champion competition ready.
Yeah, you got to be out of
your healthiest is going to be something less than that, where you're still at a very high level, but you're not at the peak performance level, and you're able to sustain that year round. So your natural body weight, if you were just eating based on, again, if we're animals and we're out in nature and we don't have all these addictions and all these stimulus, and that's the natural environment that our body, and so there's always practical reasons. So the training in our origins, our ancestral, the training was to be more effective hunters or more effective at defending the tribe. So more effective for warfare, more effective for hunting, more effective for the daily activities for survival. It's fight and flight. Those are the primitive. So all the training now with all the tools, it's still the same. It's fight and flight. So anything that we're doing in our training that isn't basically honoring the primitive, I would say is a waste of time, or sooner or later, you're not going to keep it. It's not sustainable. Yeah. You know, so that's where I'm at with the training. And yes, we always training the mind, because there's also times like physically you might be injured. Oh, I hurt my knee, or you know what, I hurt my wrist. Well, maybe you're not going to be doing jujitsu for a while. You can't. So does that mean you can't, your training stops? No. If you only know physical, now your training stops and you lose ground. You go backwards. But if you understand training is everything, then we can constantly train our mindset. We can constantly move forward even when we're not using our body, and we can heal ourselves. Wim Hof talks about this, but his technique is about healing your body. It's about overcoming obstacles.
Well, Wim Hof does have a background to back this up, you know?
Of course. And we can't separate it though. So to achieve this high level, we have to, and that's like with this conversation also full circle, because the leaders of the future society are the martial artists. The leaders have always had to be the martial artists, because in times of uncertainty, in the tribes of humanity, it has to be the warriors and the elders that lead us forward. And the elders are also the martial artists. They're just old men. And the martial artist, as he gets older, he learns how to use less energy and how to be more efficient. The young guy is still trying to, put on a lot of extra movements that are unnecessary because he's got that energy.
Yeah, to show off a little bit.
But in our natural origins, the old men of the civilization are also strong men. They're not weak and frail like in the world of today. Uh-huh. That you sit around the campfire and then the old man tells the story, and the old man has the stick. He's the leader, and they're actually martial artists. But back then they didn't, because we're animals. We're natural. We are predator and prey, both. We've been prey and we've been predator, and even amongst ourselves, we have in our own species, we have people that are predators and others that are prey. And, if you eat meat, you're a prey for some other animal. And we've moved so far away from nature to where we don't even kill it ourselves. We buy it in a store in a package. And if you're a kid, you probably don't even know that pretty pink little package of pink something was a cow. You don't know that.
Exactly, no.
You know what I mean? Because everything is so different than our natural. But in our origins, we were hunting for food, but not all people, because it depends on the region. If you lived in like the Caribbean, you were eating fruit and vegetation. If you lived up in like, the Scandinavian or whatever, the ice age of Europe, you were in caves and stuff, you were only eating meat because there was no vegetation. So you had to hunt and find something, right? So that's, and now what we have is everything's mixed together, and we can get any food, and it gets shipped and, frozen, but it's complicated. But the point is we have to come back to a more simple life. And, everything is about the connection of the mind and the body. We have to use the body because that's the only thing that we can affect in the present.
I don't think we're going to ever be able to get back, because as you previously said,
well, it's not going back. It's a cycle. It's a cycle.
The cycle. Yeah. Because at least on this side, nothing's going to ever be the same.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the same. I'm saying that balance. I'm saying balance, because, it's a world that's out of balance.
Yeah, it's always going to be the yin and the yang, But in a world where things are getting more and more available, working for it doesn't seem to be so much in need, because and you're talking from a food perspective to pretty much anything that you want to use.
Yeah.
You don't put that much effort in it, and that's why I believe
Progression.
in the future people are going to be less and less healthier. But what I've been talking with another friend is this: because we're having the entourage of healthy people and people that do sport. You believe that everyone is doing sport, but it's such a small percent of
True.
people that actually do sports. And it's like, if you take all the entire population that is doing physical activity, let's say 3 times per week, I don't think it's 3% of the population of the world. So that's something that's something tricky for our mind to believe that we are heading on a good path, when we're actually just are getting fooled by what we see.
Yes, I understand the concern. That is a component. The way that I see it is, we have to look backwards to see the progress. We don't see the progress as it's happening, because it moves. The naked eye cannot pick it up. The speed is different. The frequency is different. And so things are moving so slowly according to our perception that we don't even see it. And it's easy to be deceived to think that it's actually getting worse. But if you look backwards, then you see, wait a second, because 50 years ago, women couldn't even vote, for example. Depends on the country, but I'm just using an example because every country is different in the laws. But in just humanity in general, if you look backwards, it was only in the recent past where there was still human slavery wasn't even illegal. Now, I say that way because human slavery still exists and human trafficking still exists, but now it's underground. It's now no longer legal, right, in the laws of the land. So, if you do that and you get caught, you go to jail in today's world. But it wasn't very long ago where some people owned slaves, and it was perfectly acceptable in that, and you go back a little bit before that. You go back before the 18th century, even the idea that a person, like, we were all serfs and peasants. And even the idea of ownership didn't exist. Like, you only existed to work for some overlord. And so now, yes, simple people like us, common people like all of us, we can look and say, oh, we don't have the things that we want and we have to do these things. Yes, that's true. But it's still farther along than any other time in history. And your struggles are not as severe as your parents' struggles and your grandparents before, So,
exactly.
and that's, and so the question that I like to look at is the civilization of the future, and what's it going to be like our grandkids? What kind of world are they going to exist in? And I see for sure that it's going to be a better existence. It's going to be closer to what we all want, what we're going, because, and I don't know the answers. A lot of people, they try to speculate, like, you have, and it's not about right and wrong, because as we talked about earlier, there can be multiple realities existing sort of parallel,
simultaneously.
because this person can be alive and I can be alive in the same moment. And this person can see life as just only suffering, and I can see life as only opportunity and enthusiasm, right? And it's just a perspective, because life and death, it's like figure eight, and it's a cycle. So if you're focused down here and, oh man, it's going down, you got to ride that wave, and now it's circling back, and now you're on top of the wave and you're surfing, you see? So life is like that. And we're moving out of an era right now. We're moving out of a historical era to where we will be able to look back in the future and remember this, and there will be stories about it, but the world's not going to be like it. And what I think is, and Harari is probably one of the best guys that I've seen that can articulate these points in a social setting, in writing, and kind of explain it top down, like from the academic down, because the really
he's very
academic ones, they need to,
straightforward. Yeah.
and he talks about in his way, and I agree with it. It's like you can have, okay, the man and the machine. And actually, like, we're at 2020. So the numbers, okay, numerology, it's super powerful, but we're not taught numerology in our education. But in the ancient times, we were. The people that understand the numbers understand, like Tesla, the 3, 6, and the 9. You understand the power of that. You can figure out how everything works. And, 2020 is 4, because the numbers, you just sum them, 202022 is 4, right? 2030 is 5. So we're the 10-year period where the 2020 and the 2030, that's the 45. That's where the 4 and the 5 come together. That's the moment in history where that's a 45, right? When you're 45, you're changing the angle. You're changing the trajectory of, so I think 2030, this is preparing us for the 2030. And the 2030 is the big change. So we think it's changing. It is changing, but we've seen nothing yet.
Yeah, it's going to have a
yes.
later.
And, some people, I know that's not really the format for this kind of conversation. There's an element, and, because you can go a lot of different directions, but some people that are talking now about the 5G.
Oh, my God. No.
6G. Yes, but see, the 6G is coming after.
Yeah, well.
And that's the 2030 is the implementation of the 6G. And what I think, so Harari talks about, okay, for a long time, for like the past, I think 30 years or whatever, there's been people, they talk about the singularity, right? Ray Kurzweil, he is the one that coined that term, but you have other thought leaders. Elon Musk, you have a guy like Peter Diademes. He's the, what's his program? Not SpaceX, but the human, there's different programs, human genome program. There's these thought leaders that are like at the cutting edge of where the world's going and how the technology and the human come together, right? So the singularity is the idea of like the man in the machine or the automation, the AI, as you mentioned, where that point where it comes together. And for a long time, people have said 2030, where the machine is now equal to the man, because for a long time been using the machine. And now it's like we're using the machine to the point where we can't live without the machine. And now the conversation is, but is the machine starting to use us, right? That's the concern with privacy, Google interaction, data sharing, and all these other, biometric things where they can scan you and get your data. And, is there going to be chips, RDIF chips, where they insert chips? Because we already can do it to pets, to dogs, right? And now are they going to do it to people?
Yeah.
So there's all these conversations and concerns and fear and people speculating what's going to happen. So there's a point where the machine is now equal to the man, where it's caught up. And the question is, what happens now? What happens on the other side of that, which we haven't got to that and we can't see beyond it? It's the event horizon is the term. Okay, so one scenario or possible reality is that the machine becomes smarter and more powerful and enslaves the man, so that we become a slave to the machine and our masters become the machine, the computer, whatever, big brother, however you want to look at it. That's one scenario. Another scenario is the human kind of stays in control of the machine, and we use the machine as to do our bidding, and so it's creature comfort. Now we live in an environment where it's like you don't have to work 40 hours. You push a button and your food is there. You know, we have flying cars, you know, there's no wars. You have another scenario where it's like a marriage, where the man and the machine are integrated and you're cooperating. We're part man, we're part machine in a sense, or the life that we exist, we're existing within the machine.
Yeah.
So I think that we're already in that. You know,
I
as
think
some
we're
people say
getting-
that we're in a simulation.
Yeah,
But-
well, this is something that's getting back to the movie I told you, Upgrade. You're gonna see at the end. You're gonna see at the end how much of a connection it's having with the we're living in a simulation, because you don't know. You get to, as you said, the eye thinks you move very slow, but things move such at a fast pace that you're not catching up. I remember I was looking at a podcast of Joe Rogan, and there was a guy from FBI who was saying something like 9 out of 10 actual invention would scare the average Joe.
Mm-hmm.
9 out of 10, you know, and it's very true, and it has to be given to us like slowly, so people will not freak out. But
yes,
I'm a huge fan of such conversations, and I know for sure what Harari says now, it's already happening. You know.
Yes.
There's
already, different species that are forming.
There are different people, because in the past,
and there already has been.
Exactly.
From the beginning.
If you were dying in the past from cold, you were saying that, okay, this was destiny. Nowadays, you change lungs, you change spine, you change pretty much everything. There were different. There was a Russian doctor who has been trying to change the head to another body, you know, and so on. It's like the main problem for us, it's mental, to be able to comprehend such change.
Yes, and to accept it.
Yeah, because this is already happening.
Yep.
This is something that it's here to stay. And as you said, there are different paths that we can take, you know, different stories that can be unfolded. Like if we manage to understand it and go along with it, you know, it's going to help us. But as in yin and yang, there's always going to be people who believes in and people who are totally opposite to it. You know, this is, I believe that in the future, whatever future we are talking about now, if it's going to be the near future or the further future, the main thing that's going to keep us human, it's exactly this imbalance in beliefs. You know,
that's a very good point. We need to have opposition to be able to understand.
Exactly.
Because we can't see the sameness. We only can see the differences.
There's always going to be opposition, and people mocks opposition a lot of times. But as in haters, there's always going to be haters. But haters, in my beliefs, haters are good.
It's a form of love.
Yeah, haters are good.
They don't realize it or express it that way. They're expressing it in negative, but it's the same energy because it's, you know, it comes from love.
Exactly. And
it's an intense passion to feel the connection with the thing that you hate.
Yeah,
you're drawn to it.
It's the same thing.
If you care.
You put passion in a thing.
Yeah.
You can't say, okay, I don't put passion in hating someone. You can't say that because you put is the main ingredient. passionately hate someone or passionately love someone. It shares the same ingredient, you know. So
Yeah,
is
that's
gonna be,
right.
is gonna be a right to be uh, um, is gonna be a right that I would like to be in it, you know. And
Well, you're in it. You're in
I,
it.
when I say I would like to be in it, it's like in a very long term, you know. It's
It's
something.
exciting. You know, it's exciting that we get to be alive in this time because we actually get to shape the story and the world that we're stepping into and our children, you know. So for me, it's truly a blessing, and it's about, you know, it is about perseverance. That's the thing that keeps us, because for sure, any of us, we can give up. For sure, we can be discouraged. For sure, we can look and say, man, this is too much. I can't take it anymore. You know, and when we start thinking that way, if we allow that to continue, it just goes in that direction, and it's despair, you know. And but when we understand that we're here for a purpose, and you know, the cool thing is, like, when you leave this body, you get to take the experience and without the sensations. It's like you don't feel pain.
Yeah.
People that die, they're not in pain. It's the people that are left behind that are in the pain, right? When someone
Yeah.
dies, it's like everyone's so upset and crying. It could be your parent, someone, a close friend, a child, someone you love dearly, a pet,
It's
you know,
something
and
like
oh, I feel so bad, but you feel bad for yourself.
yeah.
It's the
It's
pain that
something
you're
like
feeling. That person was in pain and now they were in pain, and then finally they died, and now they're not in pain. So it's like rest in peace.
yes, yes, yes.
See? So actually, where we're going, whatever difficulties we're having in life, that's all going to be, you know, you're not going to feel that anymore. So when you realize that, it's like, well, what am I really here for then? And then it comes back. It's like you said, pyramid, you're top of the pyramid. Well, I look at it like this. Okay. We're going home. So it's like we come from some land, we got taken away from the land, and there's all the stories that tell about it. If you look at the Bible, there's a story in the Bible. You look at whatever the ancient book, it's not just religion. Religion, yeah, they try to say that they control it, but it's just the story of humanity. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, you have the ones that come from the Abraham tradition, but you have older ones too that come from like the Hindi tradition. That's the Bhagavad Gita. You have other holy books, stories. They're all the same stories. The flood, that's one of the stories. The Garden of Eden, that's a different story. The Moses leading the slaves, the Hebrews, out of the desert, escaping the reign of the Pharaoh. That's another part of the story of humanity. We have these stories, and it's like, you know, the point is, like, we all just want to go back to that Garden of Eden that we come from. We want to go back to that perfect world where it's like there's no suffering, there's no shortage, there's no violence, there's no war, because everybody has everything they need because God has provided it for us. And that's our where we come from, and that's where we return to. So it's like, for a long time, people think, oh, we're going to this place. No, the reality exists here.
Yeah.
And it's only in the mind that we have escaped from that. And it's through the mind that we return to that. And it's like, now, finally, enough people, you say the awakening, we are being awakened, where we're waking up from our sleep and starting to see the world in not how we've been programmed, but how the true program that's running, not the ones that have been added into the program, you know. And it's like, I describe it like this. It's like we are going home. And so it's like you have a ship, the ship can't leave until everybody is on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my attitude. And it's like, so if I see myself as a leader, as a strong person, the strong one is not the one that's like, hey, look at me, I'm strong. The strong one is the one that use their strength to help the weak ones that don't have enough strength to help themselves. So it's like, you got to come down, you got to help them up. So now, then the strong ones get on last.
The giving is going to be, the giving is going to be the only thing that's going to remain behind.
Exactly. So it's about the heart opening, being more kind, being more loving. And it starts with the individual towards ourselves. We have to be that way towards ourselves. And from that.
For ending it, I'm pretty sure it's quite lunchtime for you there. I'm going to ask you the following thing. If you're going to, if you could be able to say a couple of things to your old self, you know, like having a shot to taking it a little bit from scrap, what simple advices would you give yourself?
Face your fear. The thing that you are afraid of, go into that, because that's the thing that always limits when you're moving forward, that stops you from moving forward, is you get stuck there. So I would say face the fear, the difficulty, embrace that, and learn to be comfortable with the discomfort.
Awesome. It's simple. You see, sometimes in my last podcast, I was talking to a friend of mine, and there was the simplest thing ever, like quotes. Quotes are the most simple and effective things that a person can learn. Sometimes you don't need to read as much or talk to whoever you think is gonna motivate you. But sometimes the simplest words are having the most beneficial explanation for you. You know,
the principles.
The best principles. So you couldn't say it better, my brother.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
It was definitely a huge pleasure, and I hope we get to see ourselves live. I'm pretty sure not in the nearest future, but when everything.
It's going to be a great celebration.
Yeah, it's going to be a great celebration, and I'm gonna talk to you about level 2, because I really want to, as you know from our first meeting, I really want to move forward with this. And what can I say? It's always a pleasure.
Me too.
And I wish you the best.
You as well, brother. Thank you so much. Thanks for
with all the pleasure, brother. With all the pleasure. It was something very educational for me, and also to change opinions. I've always been attracted in not just giving a person how should I say, not going along with the person all the time, but when I feel like there is something that I feel different about it, I want that debate, you know. Mm-hmm. I want that pressure. Give me pressure, I give you pressure. You know?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great quality for learning.
Yeah, it's a very good ingredient for learning. Good day, brother. And
you too. A good night for you. Enjoy your family, and
thank you very much.
Pleasure to see you, brother. We'll see you soon.
Definitely. Bye, brother. Bye.
Bye.